Hello, this is Writers at Work, a podcast for readers and writers about the joys, heartaches, challenges, and satisfaction of the creative writing process. I'm your host, Jim Fusilli. As we approach the end of 2025, a special edition of Writers at Work, I speak with four writers I've known for almost 25 years. Peter Blauner, Farrel Coleman, S.J. Rozan, and Peter Spiegelman. They are much admired authors of mystery and crime fiction, with whom I've consulted and commiserated, and who have consulted and commiserated with each other as our careers as novelists careen like cars on a roller coaster. If Writers at Work is about the joys, heartaches, challenges, and satisfaction of the creative writing process, they can discuss those outcomes in great and intimate detail. Peter Reed, S.J., and Peter have experienced the highs the life of a novelist can bring. Publication by admirable houses, rave reviews, awards, the attention of Hollywood, and most importantly, the loyalty of readers. They've also experienced the lows of the writer's life, being dropped by those admirable houses, an absence of review, no nominations for awards, and silence from the film community. Thank goodness for those readers who remain true. To be a novelist is to be a solitary figure beset by uncertainty and doubt. To paraphrase Nietzsche, when you stare into a blank screen, the blank screen stares into you. Peter Reed, S.J., and Peter possess what I consider to be the most essential traits of a successful novelist: willfulness, courage, and a belief in their work regardless of whatever obstacles they may face. Let's find out how they do what they do and what they've learned from their experiences. Peter Blauner, Farrel Coleman, S.J. Rozan, and Peter Spiegelman, welcome to Writers at Work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
for having us, Jim.
Thanks for having us.
A question for each of you, starting with Peter Blauner. How many novels have you published?
I published 9 novels, written for many television shows, and written a whole mess of newspaper, magazine articles.
Reed?
31 novels, and I'll get it right someday.
S.J.?
20 and one coming out in January.
And Peter Spiegelman?
Oh my God, I am such a piker here. 6, and I'm working on about halfway through the 7th.
Okay, go back to Peter Blauner. How many publishers have you had?
Oh, wow. I think it's 4 in all in the United States. Don't hold me to it.
Okay, Reed?
I've run out of fingers and toes.
S.J.?
4.
And Peter Spiegelman?
6. 1 for all 6 of my books.
Okay. I will say that when Penguin Putnam and I parted ways after 4 books, I thought my career could not recover. Did any of you feel that way when you were severed from a publisher?
Well, I think between every book, there's a possibility that book was the last book. But, it's like being a serial killer. You can't help yourself. You just have to keep going.
I also lost my contract with Putnam, not Putnam, with Viking and Plume. And I thought, that was it. Goodbye. And, like Peter, although I don't make it akin to serial killing, I'm afflicted with writing and have no choice. So,
Yeah, I felt that when St. Martin's kicked me to the curb with the Bill and Lydia series. I was 11 books in, and I thought, well, that's the end of that. And what the hell am I going to do now? And who the hell am I going to do it for? And I had already taken 2 breaks to write other things that were supposed to become series, which did not become series. And I was really at a loss. And then I got lucky. Pegasus picked up the series, and Soho came along and wanted a different series. So now I have 2 going. But I really did think that was a nice run. I'd done well, and now what the hell was I going to do with the rest of my life? Because I feel the same way. If I'm not writing books, I feel like I'm really kind of wasting my time. So
And Peter
Yeah, Jim,
Spiegelman?
I definitely felt that way. And for me, it's a sort of recent feeling because my first, well, all of my books were with Alfred A. Knopf, and my first five books, my editor was Sonny Mehta, who was the publisher of Knopf. Sonny passed away at the very end of 2019, and lots of change, dearly missed by me and by a lot of people. Um, Lots of changes ensued in publishing, and certainly in Knopf since then. My last book with them was my last book with them. And so this book that I'm writing right now does not have a home yet. We'll see if it has a home. It's a crappy feeling, but actually, I think I first heard it from Sonny. He used to call writing an affliction, and it was a thing that you had to do, you were compelled to do, and it often sucked. If not the writing, at least the commercial experience.
And the writing often also.
I mean, writing
It's
also sucks.
painful to sit down and actually do that on some
Yeah,
days.
it's
Yeah.
painful.
I liken it to abandonment. You feel abandoned. Um, and the first time, well, apparently I've been abandoned many times. I'm used to it. But it does the first time is really because, we all project ourselves as our careers are going to go in the straight up arc. And you find out after a while it's not straight up. It's more like a ride in Coney Island, up and down and up and down. And it's not, believe me, there are pleasurable parts of this career, as we all know, but there are a lot of unpleasurable parts, and abandonment never feels good.
Yeah. You've all alluded to what one must do when one is dropped, which is get the ass in the chair and keep writing. But we all know people who've given up. We know people who were dropped or didn't sell as well, and gave up. So there's more to it than just sitting down and writing. There's a sort of willfulness that you four share. I feel. Did you finally come around to see what happened to you as an opportunity? Peter Spiegelman, can you start with this one?
Yeah, it's an opportunity in the way gravity is an opportunity. It's just like it is what it is. Um, uh, I mean, the affliction thing is I think for everybody here, it's a real thing. Like, what the fuck am I going to do if I am not writing? I mean, this is what I do, and if I'm not writing a book, I'm writing poetry, and I still write an awful lot of that. So it, it it wasn't so much the willful part was just to, get over my whiny self and go back to, this thing that I'm doing because I just kind of have to do it. Um, so it wasn't like, oh, I've gotta get back on the horse. It's like, well, I do have to get back on the horse, but uh, I kind of don't have a choice about it.
Yeah, SJ?
I, your question was, did I see it as an opportunity? No, no. What I saw as an opportunity was the new offers. Uh, I didn't see being dropped as an opportunity at all. Um, I I was lucky in getting the new offers, and I went with them. But I didn't say, oh, well, now I can just take a new direction because that direction is closed to me. I was not interested right then in a new direction. Now I can look back and say, actually, I was lucky. I was lucky in a couple of ways. One of them was being dropped because we were just not any longer on the same, as it were, page, me and St. Martin's, but lucky in what came after. So I can see that now, but at the time, there was nothing good about it.
Reed?
I think since I've been abandoned many times, Sometimes.
I'm having this vision of Reed in a little cradle on the church door
Yeah, absolutely.
over and over.
Yes. At a church door, yes, in a little cardboard box saying,
Right.
please take
Maybe
this,
in a rush
get this
basket.
guy away from me. Um, I have seen it as an opportunity to go in a new direction occasionally, since it's happened to me a few times. The first time it was like, no, I need to stick to the Mo Prager series. This is what I'm going to write, and it's what I'm known for, and it's what I'm doing. And I was lucky because several publishers picked that up. But there were other times when I lost the contract where I said, maybe I should write something new. I should write something different. And so it was, in that sense, it was an opportunity to try something new.
Peter Blauner?
The publishing business is never going to make you happy. And I didn't get into it to be in the publishing business. I didn't get into the writing business to get into the writing business, if you know what I mean. And anytime I've had to sort of engage with the machine, it hasn't been all that much fun. But that's not what I got into this for. I got into this because there was a day when I was in high school and I played hooky and I sat in the chair and I made up a story and I blasted music and I didn't go to school and it was awesome. And the person who did that is still alive some days, on the good days. And when I can get back to that chair and get back to that feeling, it's the life of kings.
I'll say that each of you wrote novels and short stories I think you may not have written had you been stuck to your original path. Peter Blauner, you won an Edgar for Best First Novel back in '91. Reed, your novels have won countless awards. S.J., same with you, countless awards, including an Edgar for Best Novel in 2003. Peter Spiegelman, you won awards for the John March PI series. So Peter Spiegelman, let me start with you. If you had continued with the March series, do you think you would have written Dr. Knox, for example?
No, I don't. And of course, my publishing career might have taken quite a different trajectory if I had, stuck out a few more March books. But honestly, maybe because I have a short attention span, I just found myself, in the middle of what would have been the fourth March novel, and I was bored and I just couldn't, I was sort of going through the motions. And I remember I inflicted this book on Reed. Like I would read to him these passages and, and it was like, okay, you're running out the clock here. It's like, this writing is all really good, but it's like you needed to do 250 or 1,000 or however many words, and you wrote some words, but like, where is this story going? And it was a function of, my boredom. And so writing Dr. Knox, writing Decibel Helpers, those were standalones and they were departures for me. And yeah, I mean, it's who knows, the road not taken, but yeah, I mean, that was, boredom presented me with something else I had to do.
SJ, as you alluded to earlier, you've taken time off from your Lydia and Bill series. I think it was 7 years at one point and 8 years at another point.
Not quite. It was 8 years at one point. I think the other was four. But
Okay.
yeah. No, I've taken long spells, and the first one was because I was like Pete. I wasn't bored, but I was out of ideas, and I thought, okay, I am not going to be one of those series writers who phones it in. I know I can get a contract for the next series book, so I'll just write something. I didn't want to do that. And I had these other ideas, so I did them, and then I came back with ideas, and that happened twice, and it might happen again. I don't know. I'm the book that's coming out in January is a Lydia and Bill book, and I have the next Bill book in mind, so it won't happen immediately, but it could still happen. So I think that, and it happens to a lot of series writers, where all of, when you get your first contract, it's like, oh my God, I have this ongoing series. This is so fabulous. And 6 or 7 books in, you think, oh Jesus, these people again. So and I have to say that the switch of publishers for the Bill and Lydia books, um, the new books for Pegasus are different in a way. They are now. It just might be because I am older and more mature and a better writer or whatever, but they are deeper books, I think. So
I, I,
that interested me too.
yeah, I want to ask you about Absent Friends,
Okay.
which is a book of yours that I love. It was such a departure for you, similar to the question I asked Peter Spiegelman. If you were bound and to the series, would you have been able to write that book? Would you have taken the risk to write that book?
Um, no, no. But I sort of was bound to the series. Only I told St. Martin's. This was my 9/11 book for people listening who don't know that, and I could not write a series book after 9/11. It seemed really stupid. Nothing that these artificial characters, these invented characters, could get involved with were in that world, in the world they lived in. Nothing was big enough to handle 9/11. They couldn't handle it. I had to invent a new set of characters, a new set of issues. And I told St. Martin's that, and they said, all right, well, you do what you have to do and come back to us, and then we'll talk. So I didn't know if they ever would want another book after that, but there was no way I would just go on. And I was between books. I had finished a Bill and Lydia book. I don't know if I was in the middle of a book, what I would do, but I wasn't, and I just couldn't go on and do that. So I took that risk, thinking, well, if nobody wants it, at least I will have written it. I will have written what I have to say about New York after that event, which is what the book is about. It's not a political thriller or anything. I just had to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did. And luckily I found a publisher who wanted it.
Yeah, SJ, I think that definitely lands with me because in my experience, um, with every book, I learn something, and as a result of what I've learned, you raise the bar a little bit in terms of what you want to do next, like whether it's stylistically or thematically or the setting or whatever. You want to do something more, right? You want to push the envelope a little bit, and I found like with the series, the series was it was presenting constraints on that, on
Yeah.
my ability to do that.
Well, yeah, to your point, I agree with what both of you were saying. At least for me, there has to be some sense of adventure or risk in what
Yeah.
I'm doing because it takes me a really long time to write a book. I've only written 9 of them. So I better be putting something on the line, or else the energy is not going to be there that's going to excite the reader as well. And, I've had the same character in only 2 of the books that I've written. It's just not the way my mind works. I
No.
like the characters that I'm writing about. I want to take through a major change in their lives, and if that's hard to do over a very very long series, I'd rather build the house and burn it to the ground by the end of each book.
Well, what's strange for me is I can do either. Like I've written a series that has 9 books in it. I mean, I'm no S.J. Rozan,
Uh,
but I've written a series with 9 books in it, and to me, the series are self-limiting, and they'll tell you when you should stop. Like the March series, the character told Peter to stop. And the writing was fine. I heard a lot of that fourth book, but it wasn't going anywhere. The writing was great. And I've also written books where I felt I'm inspired to write this, and this is not going to fit in a series like Gun Church. It just wasn't going to fit in a series. It was a subject that was really important to me to write about. I had these characters in my head, and I couldn't squeeze them and pigeonhole them into something else I was writing.
That's what
So
Absent Friends was for me. Same thing. Yeah. And there was no way to go on. with that wouldn't become a series. Your characters in Gunchurch, that was clearly a Peter Blauner kind of standalone, build the house, burn it to the ground.
Yeah, well, yeah. And it was what's funny is I couldn't get it published in Audible, published at first as an order or as a ebook and an Audible book, and then it was published in print.
Reed, you did, you alluded to the Mo Prager series. You did 9 novels in that series. And then you stepped in for Robert B. Parker and wrote 6 novels featuring his Jesse Stone character. When that assignment was offered to you, what was your reaction?
My reaction was yes, and then holy shit, because and SJ was one of the people I spoke to about it. I spoke to 3 people when I got the gig because I realized I had to write it. It's great when you get offered this great gig and then you realize you actually have to do it. So I spoke to 3 people. I spoke to SJ, I spoke to Ace Atkins, who was writing the Spencer novels, and Tom Schreck. I spoke to Tom Schreck because he's a writer and he is a huge, huge Parker fan, which frankly I'm not. Um, and I had an interesting conversation with him about how should I do this series. And he said the weirdest thing to me, which was the best thing. He said to me, I'm the biggest Elvis Presley fan in the world. And I said, Tom, what does this have to do with how I'm going to? He said, Reed, there's a few things about Elvis. I've seen all the best Elvis impersonators there are. And there's 2 things you can never get past. One, it's not Elvis. And 2, they can never do anything new.
Right.
And the minute he said that, I knew how I had to write the series to be true to the characters, but not to try and copy Parker's third person voice because it would always be seen as pastiche and imitation. So I used my voice, but kept true to the characters.
Mhm.
Peter Blauner, you mentioned your TV experiences earlier. When I look at your 1990 novels, I see a blend of fiction and shoe leather journalism. After slipping into darkness in 2006, it was 11 years before you published Proving Ground.
Mhm.
Was that because TV was your focus, or was it because you were doing your research for what became Pictures in the Sand?
It was because I was doing my research for Pictures in the Sand.
Could you talk a little bit about that book, Peter, and its long gestation period and how it came to be?
Well, just very briefly, in 2002, I got this idea to write a novel about the making of Cecil B. DeMille's movie, The Ten Commandments, which was partly shot in Egypt during the revolution and at a time when the Muslim Brotherhood was trying to take over the country in 1954. And it's kind of a prototype for the same conflicts that are going on throughout the world right now. There's this war between religious fundamentalism, military authoritarianism, and show business that's writ large today. And I thought it'll be a cinch to make this into a blockbuster novel. And then 20 years later, I was still working on it. But I knew I needed to make a living in the meantime. And so I got the opportunity to write for several shows in the Law and Order franchise, and then later in the Blue Bloods franchise. And in some ways, those were really good experiences. I got a whole raft of new friends in middle age. That was great. I learned about a whole new set of job skills. But also, if you're writing for a television show, it gets very routinized. And it has to be because you're shooting on the same sets week after week. It's the same characters week after week. If it's a procedural like the ones that I've written for, those characters really don't change or develop very much week after week. And so by the time 11 years had passed and I was still trying and failing to publish Pictures in the Sand, I was like, hey, I got to get back to writing crime novels again or something. And when I did start writing novels again, the TV experience did not change the way I wrote novels, except to make me say, what can I give the reader on the page that they can't get from watching a television show? I have to make sure that experience stays unique.
Peter, I mean, I think it's safe to say that your initial vision for Pictures in the Sand and the final and the book that was published in 2023 were quite different.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yes.
So let me throw this question to the group. Have any of you had a similar experience where you had a novel, a great idea, but it wasn't quite coming together? You set it aside and went back to it later to find that there was a lot there to work with. SJ, could you take that one?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. First of all, all of my books are great ideas before I start writing, and then I start writing, and then the idea is somehow becomes concrete and more and more less great. I have never put anything aside because it wasn't coming together.
Wow.
Although I have one that I put aside. I was starting something new, and then this co-written series came along, and so I put that aside. And I'm actually interested to know if I go back to it, what it would be like. But I've never not finished something because it had changed from it, or because it refused to change, or whatever. None of my books are the book I thought I was going to write when I started. None of them. Some of them I'm much happier with than I think I would have been with the one that I thought I was writing. Some of them, okay, fine, but I have never, there's nothing in the trunk, you know what I mean?
Right.
I have, Jim.
Yes.
Gun Church. I had the idea for Gun Church immediately. The whole book. I should know this is trouble. The whole book appeared in my head all at once. It was during a demonstration of weapons by Jim Bourne at a sleuth fest or at a conference. I don't remember which one. So I thought this is going to be easy. The whole idea, I've got the whole book in my head. And actually, it took me 5 to 7 years to write on and off because of the format of it's a book within a book within a book. It's art imitating life, imitating art, imitating life, and trying to write that. I'll be honest with you, when I had the ideas, I didn't have the chops to write it. And as I became a better writer and more experienced writer, it became easier to write. But it took me on and off 5 to 7 years to write that book.
Reed, is the book that you ended up with the book that you had in mind?
Sort of. The beginning and the end are. The getting there was boy, what a journey. It's still to me the best thing I've ever written. But it was a real labor, that
Huh.
book.
Peter
SJ,
Spiegelman?
SJ, I love what you said about, all my ideas are the greatest ideas ever, and then I start writing, and I
Right.
absolutely feel that way. It's just like, okay, I've invented sliced bread here, and it's only a matter of time before the Nobel Prize is coming my way. And then, it collapses into actual words, and, it's less great. The experience, I mean, I've definitely had that experience with like this great idea that just turns my head and it's so insistent, right? It's so insistent that you have to, pursue it. I found this with Thick as Thieves. I found it with Dr. Knox. I found it with my last book, A Secret About a Secret, that in a way, those great ideas can be distracting. Like there's the great idea, which is like, okay, here's this incredible premise, and I love this premise, and how much fun is this? But then once you've established the premise, then what, right? Then I find for myself, I find I am going back to the things that make me want to read the books I love to read, right? Because that is what I'm always chasing at some level. I want to write a book that I haven't read, but that I would love to read, right? Um, and for me, that it goes back to setting. It goes back to place. It goes back to character. It goes back to, that narrative voice, whether it's first person or third person, like what is engaging about that? What is pulling me through, this chapter and these pages. And for me, it's never like, oh, because something blew up or, like this house collapsed on somebody. It's never that, right? It's never the insane, you know, plot twist or whatever. It's always these characters who I become invested in, as a reader, right? So that's what I'm trying to bring across.
Yeah.
Well, don't you always know the difference between readers and writers? Readers always ask you where you get your ideas from, right? I mean, it's trite and it's cliche, but and it happens to me a lot when people find out I'm a writer, they ask, that's the first question I'm often asked. And there's this great apocryphal story about a French poet and a French painter are having lunch together. And the painter says, I can be a great writer. I have such great ideas. And the poet says, poems, my friend, are written with words, not ideas.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe.
I had used the term original paths earlier. I want to go back to the beginning of your careers as novelists. Peter Blauner, you were a highly regarded journalist, Reed, a poetry major who held a series of jobs. SJ, you were an architect. Peter Spiegelman, you were in the financial services industry. At some point, you all thought, I'm going to be a novelist. What were your expectations? Peter Blauner, can we start with you?
Well, I want to be a novelist, and I wanted to be a city novelist from the time I was growing up in New York City and reading Jimmy Breslin and Pete Hamill in the tabloids. And then I had the opportunity to work for Pete as his assistant when I was, in my teens. Still, but that's easier said than done if it's making the transition from doing that to writing novels. So I knew I needed a subject for a novel, and that's why I became a journalist, so I could become a certain kind of realistic urban novelist. And then I said, okay, well, it's got to be a job that puts me in the thick of the world. So I'm not just writing a snow on the tennis court novel, about suburban
How
ennui.
did you know what I was writing about next?
So that's why I came up with the idea of writing about a probation officer, because I did a story about a probation officer for New York Magazine. And then I left New York Magazine and I signed on as a volunteer probation officer for 6 months so I could have the day-to-day experience, and also that I knew it would shape me emotionally in some way, and that would give the book a certain feeling one way or the other. But I didn't know what that feeling was till I actually had the experience.
Yeah. Reed, how about you? When
Uh,
you did you think, okay, I'm going to be a novelist? And well, you said it earlier. We all expect it to be straight upward.
yeah, I I was working in the cargo area at Kennedy Airport, and I took a night class at Brooklyn College, and it was a survey class. It wasn't a writing class, in American detective fiction. And that was not what I read at all. To me, crime fiction, with the cheesy books on my dad's nightstand, with half-clad women holding guns. I mean,
What's wrong with
that,
that, man?
yeah. Well, now I don't think anything's wrong with it. So I took this class, and the first three things we read were The Continental Op by Dashiell Hammett, Farewell, My Lovely by Chandler, and The Maltese Falcon by Hammett. And this is true, and you can ask Roseanne, my wife, if this is true or not. The night we finished discussing The Maltese Falcon, I came home and said to her, I want to quit my job at the airport, and I think I can be a novelist. So I didn't have expectations, but I had dreams and silly confidence that I could do it. and I did it.
SJ?
Yeah, I didn't want to be a novelist. I wanted to write a novel. I mean, I didn't have any idea that this would become a new identity, a career, or whatever. I just wanted to do this thing. I had an idea. I had always read crime. I'd always been interested in crime, and when I was a kid, I thought I was going to grow up and be a writer, and then I went off this other way and became an architect. But I wanted to write this book because I thought it's kind of like Peter Spiegelman said, nobody had written this book yet. And I wanted to write that book that nobody had written, that I thought would be cool. So my first, when I first finished that first novel, that was an amazing moment. I realized I just wrote a book. I actually wrote a whole book. And it was after that I started thinking, I could write another book. And that became that was the slippery slope.
Peter Spiegelman?
Um, yeah. Well, okay. First of all, Peter Blauner, in describing your backstory, you basically paraphrased Clark Kent and the story of how he ended up at the Daily Planet. And I thought that was fascinating. I love that. There's more to explore in that, Peter. Um, I started out as a poet, like Reed. My first writing was poetry, and from a very young age, and I was like very serious about it. And I was like, a hair's breadth from going into an MFA program before I realized I actually had to like pay the rent and put food on the table. So I had this 20-year like, detour into banking and software engineering and stuff like that. But when I sort of came out of that and I had the wherewithal to go back to writing. I mean, I'd always written poetry, even through the banking stuff. I was writing poetry, but I was also a huge crime fiction fan, and I cut my teeth on sort of the classics of American crime, Chandler and Hammett, and, um, uh, Ross McDonald and John D. McDonald, and a lot of these guys. And I wanted to try my hand at it. Like SJ, I had no notion of becoming a novelist. I didn't know what that meant. I had no clue what the publishing industry was about. I just wanted to, see if I could write this book. And and I did, and kind of happened from there.
So all of you have landed on your feet and are publishing and are regarded and have loyal readers. Um, but is there any sort of bitterness or betrayal that, knowing what you know now, does it seem like it had to go the way it did? Or do you think, maybe it could have been, if not easier, a lot more pleasant?
Uh, um, I yeah, I think you'd be foolish to think that it couldn't go differently. Um, I know that it could have been smoother for me if I had been more when I was at Viking and Plume, if I had gotten along with my editor better. It was a hard learned lesson. I'm still around, she is not, but that doesn't mean I was right. And I really was a pain in the ass when I was there, and I was stubborn about changes, and I wish I had had the friends I have now then, because I might have gotten the advice to fight not every fight, that not everything that an editor tells you to do is worth fighting over. And when I was at Viking, I thought everything was worth fighting over. And I know this with these friends, you would have all given me the advice that now I give other people, which is you pick your fights. There are things that are important to fight about that you want, and there are things that are just not important. So yeah, for me, I think things could have been different. I think I may not have ever been dropped from Viking if I had, or it would have taken a little longer to
Right.
get dropped.
SJ, what about you?
That's funny because me too. But yeah, if I had behaved better at St. Martin's, I might still be there. On the other hand, if I were still there, would that be a good thing? You know, I mean, I cringe a little bit now when I think of things I did and think of my agent's face after I did them, and see him thinking, how am I going to repair this? But I'm not sure that would have been good. It's very hard to know. Many things could have been different, but it's very hard to know whether they would have been better or worse if they'd been different.
Right.
So I don't feel any bitterness. I mean, I feel personal animosity toward one or two people, but I don't feel like my career was derailed or kept from the super high heights because these people screwed me over. No, because I also was helped. I was helped out by people who had nothing to gain by helping me,
Right.
um, and that was a gift. So, both things happened, but I'm I'm kind of delighted at where I am now. I remember the days when I was at a conference and somebody was speaking and she had just published her seventh book. And I said, oh my God, I want to be that. I want to have seven books, and now I have three times that. I'm happy. I'm making a living. And, as Lee Child says, vertical and still in print. Um, he's a lot more vertical than I am, but okay.
Peter Spiegelman?
Yeah, I don't dwell very much on the, kind of would have, could have, should have thing. And, in hindsight, were there things I could have done differently? I'm sure, but hindsight is not available to me in the moment. And, you know, I did what I did and, lived with the results and the consequences and, happy with the books that I've written and happy that I'm still writing. Um, I am sure that, the two agents that I've had could give you a very long list of things that I might have done on, on the book promotion side of things and social media and stuff like that. But, I am who I am, and that shit is not me, and it's never going to be me. So yeah, that's my answer, Jim.
Okay. Peter
I
Blauner?
agree with you. A character is destiny. I wrote the best book that I had in me with every single book that I did. I behaved as well as I could at the time, and there's no time machine and no going back. And the fiction market is beyond my control, beyond anybody else's control. It would have been nice to write, books that had the success that Dean Koontz or John Grisham had, but I'm not them. I wouldn't have wanted to tell the stories that they told, and I wouldn't have wanted to tell them the way they told them. I'm me, and if that matched up with the market, great. And if I didn't match up with market, and I only spoke directly to a handful of people, okay, so be it. I'm lucky that I spoke to anybody else at all.
I mentioned
Lucky
up
we
top.
speak to you.
I mentioned, and Reed alluded to this a bit. I mentioned up top that we know each other for almost a quarter of a century. What has this long-standing friendship meant to each of you? I mean, we featured each other's work in anthologies, we've edited, and we've blurbed each other, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the heart to heart as fellow companions on a very difficult professional journey. Anybody want to take that question?
Well, it's nice
Yeah,
to some people in the shipwreck to share the island with, and I'm glad that we haven't eaten each other like a bunch of cannibals there. I'm glad for your insights. I'm glad for your words. I'm glad for Reed's and SJ's and Peter's as well. And I'm glad for the fellowship and what is essentially a very, very solitary job.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
have friends. I have
absolutely.
lots of friends, but you guys are like my writer friends are a special class of friends because you all belong in jail. No, uh, because it's no one understands. This is Spiegelman and I used to talk about trying making a reality show out of writing a novel. And the joke of it was that it's so internal that you can't, and that the only people who really understand how internal and what you go through to do this are the people who do it, and that's true. And so beyond liking all of you and loving all of you, there's a level at which we understand each other that the rest of the world simply cannot understand us. And I'm not sure they would want to.
That's
Uh,
bad. Yeah.
but I think it's that. I think, and it's a very lonely, it can be very lonely. And I never feel lonely as long as I have you guys and my other writer friends. It makes a big difference.
SJ?
Oh yeah, it makes a huge difference because when I started, I didn't know very many other writers, and there was a whole question of, am I even doing this right, and how, I don't outline, and is that okay, and on and on and on, and it was lonely. It was lonely. When I started, I was working at the office, so I had those guys, but you know, and then meeting you guys, which was a long time ago now, which is, um, it really, it's like you guys are writers, and you let me into this crowd, so maybe I'm a writer too. It was on that basic level, and I still feel that sometimes. But yeah, I can't imagine doing this without a group like you guys, and specifically you guys.
Peter Spiegelman?
Yeah, I don't know that I can add anything to what you all have said, except I'll try. And it's a very bizarre line of work. It is completely bizarre line of work. And I don't think that somebody gets into this because they love the water cooler conversation, on Mondays about, like, did you see the game yesterday or what you did over the weekend? That is not a thing that is often on offer here. To be able to talk to people who really understand how strange this job is, and the frustrations of, like, the commercial aspects of it, just the bizarreness of all of that, and the powerlessness over, what happens to your work once it's in that world. Um, and people who just know a lot more than I do about this world, and who, I just respect as craftsmen. It's really, it's a privilege. It's absolutely a privilege. I do not do social media. The only friends I have are, like, real life, IRL friends. And I don't have a lot of those. So yeah, I just hugely, hugely value these friendships. I can't believe 25 years, but yeah, it's like 25 years.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's put a bow on this conversation. How was your 2025 as a novelist? SJ, you won an Anthony for The Murder of Mr. Ma
Yeah.
that you wrote with John Shi Yi Ni.
It's on,
And
yeah, it's okay.
did
John,
I pronounce it any close
close.
close to
You
that?
were,
Okay.
close. Yeah,
All right, close enough.
he'd be
And
fine with it.
and the second book in the series was published last year. Did anyone else publish in 2025?
Not a
Short
novel.
fiction?
Nope.
Yeah, short stories.
Short stories. You
Yeah,
guys,
I read a Substack.
you Substack, yes, you do.
Yeah.
You're all so lazy. How could you face yourselves? You let a whole year pass.
Oh,
Yeah,
I've written a
I've
lot.
been busy shoveling coal into Satan's furnace. That's what being a novelist.
Okay, so let's try it this way then. What's next for you, Peter Blauner?
The novel that I've been working on for only 3 or 4 years, something like that, which hopefully does something new with a Holocaust novel that will make people look at it in a new way. And it's also about baseball and father-daughter relationships.
And Reed?
I have 5 novels in the can, so I don't know which one will come out next or if any of them will come out, but I'm hopeful that some or all of them will.
Yeah, SJ?
First Do No Harm is publishing in January. It's a Lydia book. And then, in theory, A Warning to the Curious, which is a Dian Lau, one of the co-written books, is coming out in September. And I say in theory because I'm working on the first ed letter now. So they're cutting it pretty close. But that's what we're planning.
Peter Spiegelman?
Yeah, I've been working on this new novel since the end of 24, and I am like a very slow writer, and I'm always in the market for distraction, and it's all too easy to find. But I'm deep into it now, and I'm liking it. I haven't gotten to that point where I just can't bear to look at it anymore. So that's going well, and I've been writing a lot of poetry, which is, of course, I've learned to use that as my distraction. So it's great, and I even inflicted some of it on Reed, and he was very kind
Yeah,
to
send me
listen.
that check, Peter.
Yeah, right away. You're gonna get a big cut of my poetry advance.
My guests on this episode of Writers at Work have been Peter Blauner, Reed Farrel Coleman, S.J. Rozan, and Peter Spiegelman, much admired authors in the mystery and crime fiction field, who have not only survived but thrive in the challenging world of professional publishing. Friends, happiest holidays to you and yours.
And
And to you,
Jim.
Jim, thanks for having us.
You, yeah.
Writers at Work is a production of Bliss Publications. Erin Mitchell is our producer. Music is by Joni Mitchell, performed by Keith Jarrett. For more, see writersatworkpodcast.com. I'm your host, Jim Fusilli. Until next time, happy reading.